So this Saturday, Notre Dame is home for their first home game of the 2024 season. I'm excited to get back into Notre Dame Stadium. I know all of you that will be coming to the game are as well. Very much looking forward to seeing what the home environment is going to be. And although the opponent you're about to face is not a juggernaut by any stretch, this is a quality football team. Notre Dame comes in obviously 1-0, ranked 5th in the country in the AP poll. You have the Irish are a 28.5-point favorite. The over-under is 44.5. That is actually down from what it was earlier in the week. When I actually did when I do the depth chart for Notre Dame, I'll put the line in there. And as of yesterday, Notre Dame was a 30-point favorite, and the over-under was 46.5. So that has already dipped a 1.5. But Notre Dame is still obviously a 4-touchdown favorite in the game. And kickoff will be 3:30 in the afternoon. It will be on NBC and also on Peacock. Northern Illinois is coming off of a 54-15 win over Western Illinois. So that was their opening win. Obviously, Western Illinois is a FCS team, and they handled business. It was a little bit of a sluggish start. It was like 6-3 at the end of the first quarter, but they really poured it on in the second quarter. And it wasn't just like short fields. I mean, they were doing some stuff and ripping off some big plays in that game against Western Illinois. Western Illinois is a how do I say this? They're really bad. And that's not meant to take anything away from it, but they're very bad. They went 0-11 the year before. They lost to Indiana State by 21 points last year. To give you a sense of how bad Indiana State is, Indiana State lost to Purdue last week 49-0. Indiana State the previous year went 1-10, and their only win was over Western Illinois. So they're not a very good football team, but still they did what they need to do in that game and got the win. And so 54-15, got a lot of action for their backups in that game. Northern Illinois is a team coming off of a 7-6 season. Their head coach is Thomas Hammond. Thomas Hammond was actually some older folks like me probably remember Thomas Hammond. I'm going to pull up his stats real quick, but he was a really good running back at Northern Illinois. And when you look at his, give me a second. I'm going to pull up his college stats here real quick and give you a sense of what he did. Hold on one second. Excuse me. It's Thomas Hammock is his name. So it would help if I spelled his name correctly to get to his stat line. But Thomas Hammock is a running back at Northern Illinois from 1999 to 2002. Ended his career rushing for 2,432 yards. He only played one game in his final season. I believe he had an injury, rushed for 172 yards in that game. As a sophomore and as a junior, he rushed for 1,083 yards in 9 games in 2000, rushed for in 16 touchdowns. And as a junior, rushed for 1,096 yards and 7 touchdowns for the Huskies back in 2001 in 11 games. So he was a really good college running back, and he's obviously now the head coach at his alma mater. Has done obviously a good job with that football team. Last year, the Huskies made a bowl game, and I'll be honest with you, there was a lot of people that liked their quarterback. I was not a big fan of their quarterback, to be honest with you, but you certainly have seen growth. He went 9-5 in 2021. They had a bit of a down year in 2022. They went 3-9, but he did a great job bouncing back last season and getting them going. He actually won the MAC in 2022. The year that 2021, the year they went 9-5, they actually beat Kent State in the MAC championship that season. And that year, they beat Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech to start the season that year. So this is a team that has had some success against Power 5 teams. Obviously, Georgia Tech wasn't that good in 2021. Notre Dame beat Georgia Tech by 55 points that year, but they still beat Georgia Tech. And obviously, this is a team that has experience playing Power 5 football teams. They played Vanderbilt last year. They played Kentucky last year. Only lost to Kentucky by 8 last season. So certainly a team that was 2 years ago. And then last season they played Nebraska and Boston College, beat Boston College last year in overtime. So Northern Illinois last season won a regular season game on the road against a Power 5 team that made a bowl game. So they're not going to come into the stadium afraid of Notre Dame. Oh, gosh, what are we going to do? They're going to come in battle, and you're going to have to be ready to be at your best because, yeah. this team is certainly going to battle. So a little bit more about Northern Illinois. As I said, they went 7-6 last season. Actually got off to a pretty rough start. They beat Boston College in the opener. Then they lost to Southern Illinois, lost to Nebraska, lost to Tulsa, and then lost at Toledo by 2 points. But they rallied and won 6 of their final 8 games, with a 6-point loss to Central Michigan and a 3-point loss to Ball State. They also beat Eastern Michigan, beat Ohio, beat Akron by 41, beat Western Michigan by 24, beat Kent State on the road, and then won their bowl game over Arkansas State to finish the season with a 7-6 record. Obviously won their game at the opener 54-14, as I mentioned. So let's look a little bit at the stats from Northern Illinois last season to give you a sense of who they are. These are their national ranks. And what you're going to find is their offense was not very good last year, and their defense was actually pretty good in a lot of areas. So especially their pass defense. And so they finished 81st last season in total offense, or scoring offense, 77th in yards per play. They were a pretty decent running team last year. They finished 37th nationally in rushing yards, which shouldn't be a huge surprise when you consider their head coach was a running back. But certainly a team that's got a shot to be a very good running team again, because their running back is back this season. That would be our Ontario Brown. If you guys are regulars on this show, you should remember the name Ontario Brown, because I talked about him before. When I did my all-opponent team last month, Ontario Brown was my second team all-opponent team running back. The only guy ahead of him was Jamal Haynes from Georgia Tech, who you guys have seen is off to a pretty good start this season. So that was obviously a player that's that some of you will be familiar with, and he's a really good football player. He is, and he's one of those guys I was talking about earlier, where you look at where Notre Dame needs to improve as a football team. Defensively, one of those things is tackling. And with Ontario Brown, you're going to have to be good at tackling. He's a short, stout kid. He's 5'10", 216 pounds. It's actually kind of funny because he's very similar to the size his college coach was when he was in college. And which I kind of find actually kind of funny. But I believe Thomas Hammock was about the similar size as Ontario Brown. So I just kind of find that pretty fun. I'm actually looking up Thomas Hammock's. Yeah, he was listed at 5'8", 211, and this kid's listed at 5'10", 216, and I don't know that he's 5'10", but he's got really good vision. He's got a thick lower body. He can bounce off tackles. He's got really, really nice contact balance. He's got really good agility, changes direction well, runs with really low pad level. Not a burner, so he's not going to rip off a lot of 50-yard runs. He's not a guy that's a threat to house it unless you just completely just don't do your job. But he's a guy that can just keep churning out yards, turn a -2 into a +4, turn a +4 into a +10, +15, +20. And those are all things that he does well. And so if you're going to bring this kid down and stop this kid from running, you're against an offensive line that returns four starters from last year's offensive line, and an offensive line that, when you look at their size, their left tackle's not real big. He's listed at 6'6", 298, but the rest of their offensive line is 6'5", 311, 6'3", 305, 6'4", 321, and 6'6", 312. So their offensive line has some good size, and as I mentioned, has 4 returning starters. So they're going to do their best to give him room to run, and their quarterback's a somewhat mobile player as well. And not a guy that's going to run a ton, but has some quickness and mobility. They'll do a lot of bootlegs and rollouts and things like that get him on the move, and are going to mean you're going to have to be disciplined. Look, one of the things they do offensively, and they have a new offensive coordinator, and actually one of the reasons I think their offense is actually going to be a lot better is they have a new offensive coordinator that does a lot of stuff that I like. So they're not just going to line up and run power O at you with their running back or just run inside zone a million times. They do a lot of pre-snap movement. They get their receivers moving on a lot of jets. You got to worry about Trayvon Rudolph, who's a really dynamic athlete at 5'10", 187. Cam Thompson's a good football player. They're going to do a lot of movement stuff. They're going to do jet sweeps. They're going to they'll go under center and do a traditional jet sweep where you just kind of open up and hand it off. They'll do shovel passes. They did something this past week out of shotgun where they kind of fake the jet sweep. The quarterback starts running, and one of their guys comes behind, and they do a little shovel pass, broke wide open for a touchdown. Had a guy come wide open out of the backfield for a touchdown. They had another big play where they ran a real quick post-snap switch, got a guy open vertical, do a lot of boot. Their first touchdown pass was on a bootleg. Quarterback got out of the pocket. So they do a lot of stuff that messes with your eye discipline. They do a lot of things that are going to allow you to they're going to force you to really be locked in. If you're not locked into what they're doing, you're going to run this way and you got the ball's going that way. You're going to have to really be focused. And so this is going to be a great test, in my opinion, for the Notre Dame linebackers, which is what I want to see. I want to see them perform well. They should be able to handle the receivers relatively well. Trayvon Rudolph is more of a quick game guy. They haven't thrown him a ton of deep balls. So I don't know that he's that kind of player. He had 4 for 104 last week, but like one of his big plays was on just a little shovel pass, and he had another play where he kind of got open on a little bit of an over concept and was able to get free. He's not a guy just throwing bombs to all day. But again, they do a lot of that stuff off action. They'll do play action pass. They did a play where they fake the handoff, fake the reverse, and the quarterback drops back. And you see that a lot in college football, but because they do so much action, if you're not disciplined the times that they do that, you might find yourself getting beat. I actually like this quarterback a little bit more than the kid they had last year. Everybody talked a lot about the kid they had last year, but I think that really just came down to the fact that he was from Michigan State. And I've never been like a really big Rocky Lombardi guy. He only passed for 2,274 yards last year, 11 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He had 7 rushing touchdowns, and people act like he's going to be hard to replace. And I just don't see it. I think this kid, Ethan Hampton, is just a good college quarterback, quality athlete, decent arm, accurate, smart, went 18 of 20 for 328 yards and 5 touchdowns in the opener. And a guy that I think he's a veteran player, knows where to get the football. And he's a guy that you've got to be prepared to have a game plan for. And, those are all things that I want to see this team do. And I think that between Trayvon Rudolph, between Antonio Brown, between all the action that they do, pre-snap and post-snap movement, this is a game where it's going to force you to be locked in. And that's certainly something that's going to help this team. And last year, stats-wise, their pass offense was terrible. And I think that's going to get a lot better this season. I think, number one, it's going to get better because teams are going to be so far focused on stopping Antonio Brown that it's going to open up some play action opportunities that certainly did against Western Illinois. And I just, they're not going to light the world on fire as a pass game. I just think they're going to be a lot better than what they were last year. And so Notre Dame's going to have to be prepared for that look from their offense. Their defense is a 4-2-5. It's not a super, super complex defense. They're smart. They got a lot of guys coming back. I think 3 or 4 or 5 of their secondary players from last year coming back. They have decent size in the secondary. Surprisingly, when you look at their defense, they've got their cornerbacks are both 6 feet tall. Javon Bird is 191 pounds. Their safeties are 6'1", 192 and 6'3", 202. Their nickelback is 5'11", 187. So they've actually got pretty decent size in the secondary. They're not great athletes, but they're very sound. They're smart football players. They're experienced football players. And so, you're going to have to work a little bit. When you look at their stats from last year and you look at their passing stats from last year, their rushing defense was not that good last season. They only finished 62nd in college football last year, but they finished 23rd in yards per game. And the reason why is because of how good their pass offense was. And when you look at Northern Illinois team last year, they lost a game by 3, a game by 8, a game by 2, a game by 6, and a game by 3. Meaning they didn't do well in pass yards because they kept getting blown out a lot, and they were able to keep yards down because teams were running on them and they weren't throwing late because they were down. And so they were legitimately that good of a pass defense last season in almost all instances. And when you look at kind of how they fared against the 2 Power 5 teams that they played last year, Boston College went 17 of 38, 168 yards, only 4.4 yards per attempt. Nebraska last year went 14 of 24 for 158 yards, 6.6 yards per attempt. Tulsa only went for 5.1 yards per attempt. They held Akron to less than 5 yards per attempt, Ohio less than 5 yards per attempt, Eastern Michigan less than 6, Ball State less than 5, Western Michigan less than 6 last season. So, and the most yards they gave up in a game last season passing was Toledo, who went for 281. They only allowed 3 opponents all season to pass for over 200 yards last season. So stopping the passing game is an area where they certainly got a lot better. The year before, they were not a very good pass defense. In 2022, they gave up 252.8 yards per game and 32 touchdowns, 8 picks. So they made a concerted effort to get a lot better on that side of the ball last year, and they did. Again, very disciplined team, very experienced team. You're going to have to be very good and very locked in to get that team to move the ball on that team, but they should, because in this instance, especially since their best defensive lineman is out, he was injured early in the season. I don't know if he's hurt in camp or in the offseason, but he missed last week's game. He's not listed on their depth chart for this game. That's certainly going to help them. They actually have pretty decent length on the edge of their defense. Their 2 ends are 6'4", 286 and 6'6", 251. They got decent size up the middle, 6'2", 293, 6'2", 300. Their top backup is 6'2", 308. They have a couple other guys that are 285 plus. So their defensive line actually has some size. And as I mentioned, their secondary has some size, but they don't have great speed and great overall athleticism. So this is a team that Notre Dame should be able to move the ball on, but they're going to have to earn it. And they're definitely going to have to earn it in the secondary. So we're going to see the Notre Dame receivers get tested a little bit more than you might think against a MAC team this weekend. And if they can step up and perform at a high level, that'll be considered a success, because this is a quality defense. There's no doubt about it. A very quality defense. And in the opener, they gave up 17 of 29, 204 yards and only 1 touchdown, 7.0 yards per attempt. And if you watch that game, they got a decent amount of yards in the throwing game after they were up big, and they held Western Illinois to 94 rushing yards, only 3.2 per attempt. So that's just kind of where they are at this point in time. So it's a quality football team. All right, so getting back to this game and this matchup, as I said before, Notre Dame is going to have to. They're going to have to bring it this weekend for a host of reasons. And if you do pound this football team, then you get better. And I know this, what drives me nuts about games like this is fans who come out and say, just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. I don't know what coming out and just running of the ball on a team that's inferior to you really does when it comes down to actually making you a better football team. And right now, Notre Dame needs to come out and improve their pass offense. Their pass offense has to get better. It's not going to get better just because you go out for the next 3 games and just run the ball down the throat of teams who you are far superior to. So no, just coming out and running the ball does not. It may work. They may win the game. It may allow them to win by 40 or 50 points, but I don't know that necessarily makes them a lot better. But I also don't think this is a game where you get into a situation where you just come out and air to every down either. You have to, both aspects of your offense need work. It just can't be a game where you just come out and overwhelm them with size and run for 350 yards and throw for 150 and feel like you got better. I don't know that necessarily does that. So they will have to come out and find ways to improve their pass game against Northern Illinois. And if they do, it's going to have to be earned, because as I mentioned, this is a pretty decent secondary, very experienced secondary coming back, and they have pretty sound scheme. And that's one of the things that works for them, is because they're not running these crazy exotic things. At least I haven't seen a lot of that. And so they're just kind of letting their kids play and teaching them sound fundamentals, and it's allowed them to reach their full potential as players, because I don't think the talent is great. And that's certainly something that they're going to have to continue to recruit better, but I do think they're coached really well. I think the hire that Thomas Hammock made for his OC, at least in the first game, I was very impressed with what he did in the first game. I'm not at all familiar with what he did beforehand, but I'm just telling you what I saw against Western Illinois. I was very impressed with all the stuff that they do. They're going to put you in a lot of stressful situations that you got to be prepared for. So I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing that. So again, this is a quality football team. This is a team Notre Dame should beat, and beat soundly. But this is a team that will test you. This is a team where you're going to have to be locked in. You can't sleepwalk through this game. They are more Toledo than they are Bowling Green, right? Because remember, Notre Dame they weren't really locked in against BG in 2019, and they beat them like, was it 59-0, because they were just way better than Boston College. And then you come out against Toledo and you're not locked in, and they've got really good scheme and they're doing a lot of different things, and you're turning guys loose and you're blowing coverages, letting guys run in for long touchdowns. You couldn't defend the quarterback. And next thing you know, you need Jack Cohn to rally you back in the last minute of the game to beat Toledo. Y'all, that was 3 years ago. That 3 years ago. I mean, obviously it was a different head coach then, but the fact is the principle's the same. 2018, Notre Dame earns a huge season opening win over a really good top 15 Michigan team. Beats them, controls the game for 60 minutes. And you come out the next week and you only beat Ball State by 8 points, and that was a bad football team, Ball State was. This is not a bad football team. This is a good football team for their level. So quality football team for their level. So for Notre Dame, it's going to be about, don't let them hang with you. They shouldn't hang with you. This is a game that Notre Dame should win convincingly. I'm not sitting here trying to tell y'all that if Notre Dame only wins by 14, you should be happy because Northern Illinois is really good. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, however, is if you try to sleepwalk through this game, if you don't have a focused week of practice, if you're not going out there trying to get better, this could look a lot like Toledo in 2021. I don't think they have the athletes Toledo had, but you get the point. They certainly have better players than what Ball State had when they took a Notre Dame team that went 12-0 and took them down. It was a competitive game for 3 quarters, and Notre Dame pulled ahead. I think it was like 24-10 or something like that late, and then Ball State scored. It was 24-13, and they kicked the field goal, I think is what it was, later in the game. But you let the team hang around. You can't do that. You have to be locked into this game, and if you are locked in, they'll win, and they'll win convincingly. This game will be over halftime, third quarter at some point in time. But will they be locked in? That's what we're going to find out, and that's what Notre Dame still has to prove. So, because you all know, let's be real, if Notre Dame struggles with this game, they're going to get a lot of the same treatment Michigan got for not blowing out Fresno State. They're going to get the treatment that Oregon got for not blowing out Idaho. Oregon beat Idaho by 10, and they dropped from number 4 in the polls to number 6 in the polls, or 7 in the polls, and Notre Dame leaped them in the AP poll, which is why Notre Dame went from 7 to 5, partly because of how well Notre Dame played, but then also partly because of how poorly Oregon played. So they're going to have to prove that last week that's just the beginning. That's just the foundation of what this team is going to be. And if they can play their game, then this is a game that they should be able to dominate, because you're playing a good football team that's coming off a game when they rushed for over 300 yards. They got a really talented back, really good athlete at receiver, very good veteran quarterback, and a very experienced defense that does their job well. So if Notre Dame's prepared and they're locked in, they're going to roll. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing that. I did have a super chat here that I want to get to before we get out of here from Judge Philip Banks, 2024. Speaking of young guys, it seems the program has gotten away from the excuses of young guys not knowing the systems and not able to play fast. Look, there were times when they didn't, right? There were times they didn't play fast, but the whole point that we've made for years, and we talked about this in last night's show, the frustrating thing is you're going to get mistakes when you play young players. We saw that Saturday against A&M. Christian Gray made mistakes. Don Schuler made mistakes. Drake Bowen made mistakes. Kingston made mistakes. Jalen Steed made mistakes. Jaden Alsbury made mistakes. Jaden Greathouse made mistakes. Jeremiah Love made mistakes. Jadarian Price made mistakes. Sam Pendleton made mistakes. Anthony Knapp made mistakes. Emil, Bill. All the young guys made pretty big mistakes in the game, but they also all made a bunch of plays because they're really talented. And that's always been the beef that I've had, is give these kids a chance to play, because if you give them that experience, and they're going to get better and better and better and better, and eventually the talent rises to the top. But they're not. Can you improve playing scout team? Of course. There's value and merit to that. Can you improve not playing in a year? Sure. Do you improve even more when you get opportunities to play? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's where you're going to see this team have a chance to get better and better and better. And it's also why I think this team still has so much room to get better is, yes, they've got, Jack Kaiser's going to get more comfortable playing his position, but Jack's not going to necessarily get experience in the system's going to make him better, but it's not like way better. Same with Riley Mills, same with Howard Cross, same with Xavier Watt. I mean, it's just do your job, play great every week. With these younger players, you expect sort of a trajectory upwards from their performance and their play because they're not close to their peak as players. And so you're not going to get that growth if you don't play. And so all those kids that play, and look, there's going to be games where Don Schuler does not play well. There's going to be a game this year where Christian Gray does not play well. That happens with the young. There's going to be a game where Drake Bowen and Kingston don't play well. It's going to happen. That's what happens with young players. But the more you play them, the more they kind of go up like that, and that's why it's good. And that's why I'm glad they played them. But the other thing, too, is I'm going to have an article out. I think it's going to probably come out tomorrow. That's my hope. But this is a different type of talent, too. Let's be honest. Marcus Freeman's bringing in a different type of cat. Marcus Freeman's definitely shopping down a different aisle than the previous head coach. There's no doubt about that. So not only are you playing those younger players, but you're doing it in a situation where you're also playing some dudes. And that certainly helps quite a bit. So that's going to do it for today's show. Here's the schedule for the rest of the week, including the mailbag. I'll tell you about that. So tomorrow I'm going to go live at 1 o'clock for the midweek rundown. I have a lot of different topics I'm going to talk about then. On Thursday, it's going to be me and Ryan Roberts going over keys to victory for Notre Dame against Northern Illinois. Then we'll make our Notre Dame predictions. Trevor's living the married life this week, so you won't see Trevor until Saturday for the post-game show. But then Thursday at 2 o'clock, I'll be joined by Bill Bender. He and I are going to preview this weekend's big games. I believe the games we're doing is Texas, Michigan. We're going to do that one. Let me actually pull up the scores. We're going to do Texas, Michigan this week. We're going to do Iowa, Iowa State. We are going to talk about Tennessee and NC State. And then we are also going to talk about, there's one other game that we're going to discuss. And here, let me find the text message I sent to Bill, and he'll tell you, or that'll have it. It's Texas, Michigan, Iowa State, Iowa, Tennessee, NC State, and Colorado, Nebraska. So we'll preview that game as well. So those will be the few that we are going to go over this weekend. That'll be Thursday. Then Friday, 1 o'clock will be the mailbag. So I'll do a mailbag on Friday. So the Friday mailbag, that'll be sort of our normal Friday routine. Last week was a little bit different because we did the mailbag on Monday, and then Friday I just did something different. But the mailbag on Friday. And yes, Salty, we will have the normal midweek rundown is I go over the different subjects. Then we have buy, sell, hold. So that is part of the normal Wednesday routine. So we will have buy, sell, hold tomorrow as well. Friday mailbag, and then Saturday post-game show with Vince, Trevor, Ryan, and Sean. And then Sunday night, we'll get back to our normal upon further review schedule. So that is the schedule for the week. And then, of course, tomorrow night and Thursday night, 5 o'clock, IB Nation Sports Talk. And then Sean will publish the countdown to kickoff. The difference between this year and last year is we decided to publish it Friday night as opposed to waiting on Saturday, partly because of how many afternoon games Notre Dame has. Y'all don't have as much time to listen to it when we put it up on Saturday morning. So this way, when Sean and them are done recording it, he'll get it published on the YouTube channel and on the podcast app, which you need to subscribe to the podcast app also, and then you can get that. So 1 o'clock tomorrow, rundown, and then buy, sell, hold. Thursday, 1 o'clock, we'll do keys to victory, predictions, and then we'll have the big college football segment after that. Friday, 1 o'clock, mailbag, and then Saturday, post-game show, we'll go live. It's usually the way we do it is like the first 10-minute mark after the game. So sometimes that's 9 minutes. Sometimes that may be, as long as it's after 5. So if it's like 38, we'll do it at 50. If it's at 41, we'll do it at 50. So we'll go pretty quickly. We'll get that going pretty quickly, and then the guys will be doing that. I'm not going to probably jump in this week's post-game show and let the guys handle it. I thought they did a great job. And my thought is I like this rant segment was fun, but I think what I'll probably do is just kind of record that more often than not and then put it up. And we'll have some fun with that. But that's why you need to be subscribed to the channel. IrishBreakdown.com is where you can find all of our free content. Irish Breakdown is the channel. You go to any of your podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, or Google, Spotify, whatever. Type in Irish Breakdown. You'll see our IB logo pop up. You'll know that that's us. Of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And the best stuff is always on the premium message board at boards.archbreakdown.com. So for the rest of my crew that couldn't be here today, I had to go solo today because Trevor is now a married man and kind of doing some things to get caught up on that. But hope you guys enjoyed the show today. And I look forward to seeing you all again. If you have not done so, if you are a member, go check out that film breakdown that I did. There's some more coming this week, but I think you're going to enjoy that breakdown. And if you're not a member and you want to check out the breakdown, the all 22 film and all the stats and all that stuff, go to boards.archbreakdown.com. Definitely going to want to check that out. So anyway, have a great rest of your day, everybody. And I will talk to you again very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.